Hi, I'm Amanda and welcome to the Hot Plate. Today we're getting steamy in the kitchen making meatloaf. This isn't your mama's meatloaf. This is a turkey pork meatloaf wrapped in prosciutto and then glazed with a balsamic chipotle glaze. It's got a little bit of that healthy kick, but then lots of that bacony goodness. And we've got all of the ingredients right here. We've got a 1/4 cup of ketchup, 1 tablespoon of honey, 2 tablespoons balsamic vinegar, 2 tablespoons Dijon mustard, 2 tablespoons adobo, which comes in cans of chipotle peppers, 1 teaspoon of cumin, 2 teaspoons of oregano, 1 cup of unseasoned breadcrumbs, 1 pound of ground pork, 1 pound of ground chicken, 1 red pepper, 1 medium Spanish onion, 8 strips of prosciutto, some salt and pepper. We'll start by assembling our glaze so that all of our flavors have time to meld together. In our bowl with our adobo, we're going to mix in our balsamic vinegar, the honey, the mustard, and then finally our ketchup. Now give it a good stir to make sure that everything's all combined, and then we're going to go ahead and set it aside while we start on our meatloaf. Making our meatloaf starts in a large mixing bowl with our breadcrumbs. Then to the breadcrumbs, we're going to add our ground chicken and the ground pork. Toss in the cumin and the oregano along with a little hit of salt and pepper, and then crack in that large egg. We're going to start to mix it all together. Now, in some recipes, you might see that the meatloaf calls for stale bread mixed with milk. You could definitely use that here, but I really love what a great, inexpensive pantry staple breadcrumbs are. And because we're using the pork and chicken, we've already got lots of moisture in here. Now that the base of the meatloaf is mixed together, let's move over to our cutting board. We can start by removing both ends of the onion, and then carefully slice through the outer layer of the onion and remove that skin. Now remember, if you're a crier, just go ahead and toss the onion into the freezer for 15 minutes before cutting into it. Now cut the onion in half, but we're going to put 1/2 aside to save it for another use. With the remaining half of the onion, we want to chop it nice and finely. Now the easiest way to do that is to cut the onion horizontally so that it's almost in half. And then we're going to carefully slice down the onion into 1/4 inch thick strips. And then come back crosswise and cut it again until we get those nice fine 1/4 inch pieces. Now for our red pepper, we're going to go ahead and cut off the flesh, and then carefully laying it down on the cutting board, we're going to cut it into thin lengthwise slices. This way we just have to gather up all the slices and then turn them so that we can cut through them crosswise to make a nice fine chop, just like we did with the onion. Remember that we want the onion and the peppers to be about the same size so that they cook at the same speed. Moving over to our stove, we have 2 tablespoons of olive oil that are heating over medium-high heat. Once the skillet's preheated, dump all of the finely chopped onions and pepper pieces into the skillet. Start to saute until the onions and peppers are soft and the onions are almost translucent. This will take about 8 minutes. Now saute translates from the French word to mean jump. So we'll continue to stir or jump the veggies until they're soft but not browned. Now that our vegetables are ready, we're going to add them into the bowl with the rest of our meatloaf mixture and stir it all together until it's combined. We want the meatloaf to stay fluffy, so make sure that we're folding in the ingredients. Try using a large spatula instead of a spoon to fold in the ingredients. This will help keep all of the air inside. Then once the meatloaf ingredients are completely combined, we're ready to start shaping it. To cook the meatloaf, I'm going to be using a tin loaf pan. Now you could use an aluminum one, which you could just buy at the grocery store, or you could just shape the meatloaf into an oval and then bake it directly on the baking sheet. Now comes my favorite part of this whole recipe, when we get to wrap the meatloaf in prosciutto. We're going to do this by grabbing our first strip of prosciutto, and then we're going to lay one end in the middle of the loaf tin. Just drape the remaining prosciutto over the side and let about 1 to 3 inches hang. We're going to continue to do this with 5 more of the prosciutto slices until the interior of the tin is completely lined. Then grab your meatloaf and shape it with your hands into a rough oval so that it's about the same size as the tin. Just pop it inside, and then we're going to grab our remaining 2 pieces of prosciutto and lay them over top of the meatloaf. Now, to make sure that our meatloaf is completely encased in this delicious prosciutto, we're gonna grab all of those hanging bits hanging over the side and then fold them over top of our meatloaf. Okay, so for our final ta-da, it's time to add the glaze. We're gonna pour half of our glaze that we made earlier over top of the meatloaf and then smooth it over using either a silicone brush or the back of a spoon. Keep the rest of the glaze because we're gonna use that again halfway through the cooking. Now we're going to transfer the loaf tin onto a baking sheet and pop it into our oven, which has been preheated to 350 degrees for 1 hour. Halfway through the cooking, pull out your meatloaf for a second and add the remaining of that smoky chipotle glaze. So our meatloaf is all done and I can smell all of that smoky adobo flavor and I can't wait to get a bite in here. Oh yeah. We've got that nice texture from the onions and peppers, but it's kind of creamy in the middle from the breadcrumbs. This meatloaf is totally diabolical. Thanks so much for checking out The Hot Plate, and make sure to check this and all of our other episodes and recipes at thehotplate.com and updates on our Facebook page, facebook.com/thehotplate.